What's up, everybody? This is the People Man Talks podcast, and I'm your host, Emanuel Solomon, the People Man with Emanuel Solomon Training and Coaching. I'm an interpersonal skills coach who helps high-performing professionals of color to promote and reposition with power through increasing their cultural, emotional intelligence. I have a passion for working with people of color and helping them reach their greatest potential while dismantling systems of whiteness that render people of color paralyzed, neutralized, and mesmerized in the process. If you want to contact me, go to EmanuelSolomon.com to get all my information, content, resources. Contact me there at EmanuelSolomon.com, or you can go to EmanuelSolomon.com and get your free training. This is a free gift, free for professionals of color and advocates of color who are looking to promote and reposition with power interpersonal skills training. So go to EmanuelSolomon.com and get your free training. Go check that out at EmanuelSolomon.com. This is the People Man Talks podcast, and I have a special guest with me today by the name of DJ O.G.ONE. Okay, the official DJ of the Portland Trailblazers. Over 20 years of DJ experience. Has hosted several celebrity parties with some of the most prestigious celebrities. Some by the name of Michael Jordan, Damian Lillard, Jay-Z, just to name a few. He's an entrepreneur and CEO of Leadertainment, coaching folks in the entertainment and music industry. Again, the official DJ of the Portland Trailblazers. Please welcome DJ O.G.ONE to the People Man Talks podcast. How you doing, bro?
It's good to see your face. You was a little chopped off there in a little second, but
I know. We're getting it. We're working it out, man. How are you doing, man?
I'm blessed, man. I'm very blessed, and yeah, I'm blessed, man. I'm good.
Okay.
Good. I'm here, and as long as I got breath and I'm here, man, I'm good.
Okay. I get that, man, and I appreciate you coming on the show, man. This is about to be an amazing show. You're a friend, you're an inspiration, and you create legacy impact. And legacy is something that you have to dig in the dirt, long hours to create legacy. And I feel like you've already created that foundation for legacy. Tell me about, like, how do you feel about where you're at right now?
Well, depending on what context you're asking it, it can be personally, professionally.
Just the legacy that you've already left. We understand Corona is here,
right?
And we also understand that the world is changing tremendously, and it might not return. But the work that you put in beforehand counts, and the work that you're still doing. So how does it feel right now in your career, where you're at?
I feel like I'm in a good space, man. I've created, I guess, a space for myself, as you were saying, just laying a foundation. I've always been a person that feel like my biggest asset has been people.
Okay.
Relationships with people, both personally and professionally. And so I've been very intentional about building solid relationships, period. So no matter what happens in society, the economy, or whatever, I can always count on solid people. My career has been built on the right people saying the right things about me.
Okay.
Which creates that legacy, because I can be great at anything, but if I don't make an impact on people, how does legacy get passed on? How does legacy be? How does it become the story?
That's huge. That's huge, man. And right now, one of the exciting things that we've been talking about a little bit, you know, offline is your leadertainment business.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about leadertainment and where they can go to find you if they want to support you.
Well, leadertainment really came from just the idea of things that I have already been doing for many years. Musically, when I first came on the scene in Portland back in the early 90s, like 93 is when I hit the scene in Portland musically, even though I've been DJing, you know, for many longer years than that, but it was based out of LA. But when I came to the music scene in Portland, once I kind of got established, I've always kind of played the role of passing on information as I learn things, being able to pass it on and can consult and mentor other artists or DJs or whatnot. It was just on the love, and you know, it wasn't a business. It was just, this is just what you do. You pass that information on. And as the years have gone by, and I've mentored, you know, here in Portland, plenty of, you know, people, whether it's athletes or artists, just on the strength of just wanting people just to win. You know, so I got to the point where I was doing it so much that it was taking up a large portion of my time during a week. I remember a few years back, this was probably about 4 years ago, and I spent maybe 1 week, I spent maybe like 20 hours just meeting with people about their careers and how, you know, things they need to set in place to, you know, grow, et cetera, et cetera. But that 20 hours was spent, and I wasn't getting paid for any of that.
Right.
And
you're DJing, and you're doing your other projects at the same time.
And I'm DJing, I'm producing, I'm, you know, doing stuff in the community and trying to build my own business. But that was 20 hours that not only I took away from my career, but I took away from my family time, you know, time with my wife, my kids, and those things. And it wasn't a bad thing, but I had to really kind of get real with myself and say, can I afford to spend 20 hours a week giving out this knowledge and wisdom, and there is no compensation other than it's a pat on the back. You know,
so like a job well done. Yeah.
And again, I love helping people, but again, it got to the point where I had to create a system where it kind of filtered out those that might have took my information and did nothing with it. They took it. It was just it started becoming more of, I got a chance to sit down with O.G.ONE.
Yeah.
As opposed to them really taking it on. So I just created Leadertainment because I was like, okay, if people want this information, they want the knowledge that I have in the coaching that I can provide for artists, then are they willing to pay for that time? And that's where Leadertainment came from. The whole concept is, as anybody can see, a lot of times you see, whether it's athletes or entertainers, you see them get this prominence and they get the money and they have the access and the resources, and then you wonder why they get in trouble, you know, and say, man, they got all the money, they got all the fame, celebrity, why are they getting in trouble?
Right. Why can't they?
Exactly. Why can't they get together? Well, the problem becomes is that for a lot of times, particularly people of color, we get in those situations because we are grinding and hustling, trying to get out of bad situations. And so during that process, there's no one usually there to coach you on your personal life to keep it balanced with your talents, so your personal life doesn't come and interrupt your craft. So what happens when you get that money and you get that position, you're only going to do what you already have always done. So if you was getting in trouble and having issues when you didn't have no money, money just
you're going to have them when you do get money. Yeah, exactly.
So I just thought, I said, okay, well, you know, whether you are already in that position or you're on your way to those positions, position myself to be able to coach people to find that balance. To say, okay, here's some areas that you need to work on in your personal life, and here's some areas professionally that you can work on to enhance your talent. You know, so it really is tailor-made for each artist or athlete to say, okay, what are your goals personally and professionally, and do they meet? And if they don't meet, let's set a plan in place to bring that balance up. So that's what Leadertainment is about. And people can find me on leadertainment.net if they're interested in connecting. But the great thing about Leadertainment is that I have no quota. I have no, I gotta, it really is a personal experience. And so, I get to interview people as opposed to people interviewing me to see if they want to use my service. I get to interview people and see if I want to work with them.
Right. Like, hold on. Let's see if I want to spend an extra, exactly. 10 hours, 20 hours working with you. Cause I the bills are paid. I'm good.
Right.
This is on my own. This is on my own dime. So
exactly.
Yeah. I get that. Definitely. That's tight, man. What I wanted to ask you too is like your people skills are a part of who you are. Like, we've developed a relationship within the last, I'd say, 7 years or so.
Yeah.
And
years go by fast, right?
It does. And I'm getting old. My back now. I'm playing with you. But the thing about you that I was really attracted to was the fact that you were so authentic and so genuine, but genuine in a way that invites people in. Because you can be authentic and you can be genuine and be a jerk. That's just who you are. You can be genuinely a jerk, but I felt like no matter your status or somebody else's status, you've always had that ability to connect. Does that come from, your upbringing? Where do you get that from?
That really comes from my faith, man.
Okay.
God, man. And I just truly, just on principle, believe, and biblically that you have to give an account for how you deal with people. You're going to have to give an account. That invoice is going to come out, on how did you handle people.
Yeah.
And so I try my best to operate from that place that it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have, how much fame you have or don't have, whatever status that people measure the importance of people, I throw that out the window because it really comes down to would I stand before God and say, I did right by that person. Period. So that's how I deal with people. So, the genuineness comes from that. I know what it, and the other part, yes, upbringing, I know what it's like to be at the bottom of things, being poor, being, not valued, particularly as a Black man. I know that emotionally, I have an emotional attachment to those things. I know what it feels like to be perceived one way or misjudged.
Yeah.
And so I try again my best not to put myself in a position where I'm doing that to other people. And so my interactions with people are very intentional. I don't care if it's the janitor or if it's the multi-billion-dollar exec. You're gonna get the same person regardless.
So what I heard from you is you treat people in a regard as because you feel like you have to give an account for how you treat people. But what are the principles? What like is it conscious? Is it something on your mind? Like when you go and approach somebody, or is there some things that are going on in your mind, or that are tangible thoughts that from person to person can, I got to treat you right, or what are those kind of principles that kind of guide that?
Well, if I set aside, you know, like I said, mine's come from a spiritual foundation, but you can apply it. And if you don't believe in God or any spiritual faith-based situation, you can take the same principles. It's something that I teach my clients. Is something that I teach young people in particular. When I say you still have to give an account. So if I use an example, I was talking to a group of kids one time, teenagers, and I was talking to them about, I can meet someone on the street and think that they're nothing based on how they're dressed or whatnot, but I cannot tell you what they're connected to. I don't know. I have to take them at face value. Anybody I meet, I have to take them as face value initially. But I can't tell you how many times that when I've treated the person that I thought was insignificant with respect that I would want to be treated as, somehow those people have been connected to somebody who was connected with somebody who they went and said, you know, that guy, that one guy, that DJ guy, he treated me nice. He didn't judge me. He didn't treat me as though I was insignificant. And they were an exec's son or daughter. Or they were the difference between someone who called a network and said, hey, I have this guy in Portland that you should spotlight. And then next day I'm on a plane to New York on BET.
That you know, what I heard from you is treat others like you want to be treated.
It's deeper than that. Treat people like they want to be treated.
Yeah.
See what I mean? As should be treated. Because if I treat them how I want to be treated, that might be interpreted a little different. You know what I mean? In terms of actual application, but respect is a bottom line principle that everyone should have. Doesn't matter what your status is. Everyone deserves respect. And a lot of times people want to say, well, I'll give respect if I get it.
Right.
Well, where does the example? If you're waiting for other people to give the respect, where's the example? What if everybody took that on? Oh, I'm waiting for someone to respect me before I respect them. And nobody is going to set the example. So I decide to set the example. Regardless if I'm going to get it in return or not, I just set myself in a posture where I'm going to be the example regardless of what the return is, because that's just the person I want to be. That's the type of character that I want to operate from. I don't do bad business with people. I try not to do any bad business with people, just again on principle, because I'd rather someone speak highly of me than me get money off of them. I hustled them, and now they have negative things. That goes farther than the money I can get.
It's relationships, man. It's really about relationships, and I talk about this all the time. I talk about relationships are everything. You know, you're one connection away, you're one relationship away from changing your whole trajectory in your life, and how you treat these relationships are going to affect your success. And so many of us, you know, we have this fight, this internal fight, you know, where it's like, I don't necessarily feel like giving the energy. I don't necessarily feel like giving the effort of connecting with this person, or giving the person their due, or their due respect, their not just respect, but I call it value, you know, that to value people on a high level. And what you talked about is leadership. It's not about, it's about them, but it's not about them at the same time. It's about me and how I approach the world, how I approach people. And regardless of if this person is going to be nice to me one day and then horrible to me the next, I have a standard. I have a standard on how I communicate and how I connect with folks. And that's that reputation. And I feel like that reputation precedes you, because you've continually done that. Like people, like your when your reputation goes before you, I think you're at that level, or you've been at that level for a long time, to where your name, you know, when people say DJ O.G.ONE, they don't need a whole lot of credibility. They don't need to go check a whole lot of check boxes. They're like, oh, okay, oh yeah, you already know, you know, and you know, I haven't gotten to that level yet, man. What kind of habits, what kind of work ethic came into creating this legacy of who you are now?
Well, I think consistency is the word that comes to mind.
Okay.
Because we live in a world that there's a lot of game that goes on, whether it's, you know, street level or in the corporate world, where people have the ability to you know, talk and say a lot of things and be very convincing. But at the end of the day, people want to see how you walk and how you live. They want to see how battle tested you are. And so one of the things that is cool, but it also sucks sometimes, is when your life is lived in a public eye. You know, people can see you and people can see how you operate. And so when I say consistency, people watch me walk the words that I say. See, I mean, there's been people, you know, I've been in forums and in different places where I've talked about some of the same principles and things like that, and I can talk it, but then when people see that, oh man, he got jerked over by this person that he was nice to, how is he gonna respond? Okay, this person did this to him and did that, or didn't do good by this, how is he gonna respond now? You know, and so people watch that, and I'm very consciously aware that people watch how I handle stuff, you know, and that adds credibility. So when I do speak, you know, I want my words to carry weight, not just because my ability to say the right words, but the genuineness that you feel is because it's not manufactured. See, I mean, I only want to speak on things that I'm setting the example for. And that example doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, but you're accountable to it. So if I'm talking about, you know, respecting someone, and let's say if I find myself in a situation where I haven't respected somebody, I can come back and say, you know what, I apologize, because that is not who I am and that's not what I want to represent. You know, I ask your forgiveness for being found in that situation. Now, I've had those in my life where I've had to go back and say, you know what, I misrepresented myself on that. That isn't who I was. And sometimes it was in situations where I was right, but the way that I handled it was wrong. And so being able to be
your approach,
exactly,
like in the, you know, your intentions were right, but maybe the approach was off a little bit.
Absolutely. And so I had to be humble enough and accountable where I'm saying, okay, well, I can't just be talking this stuff and not live it. So when I talk to someone and if I'm coaching people, I can tell them from a realistic standpoint, yes, I've been in these situations and this is how I dealt with it. Yes, with these emotions raging or this feeling this way, but this is how you are to carry yourself. What is your brand? Your brand personally? What is your brand professionally? And is it consistent with how you're living and making your decisions every day?
Again, that's leadership, you know, and you know, I think what you really talked about is like talent versus leadership level, and I think that's one of the things that you coach some of your folks on is like, yo, you've got amazing talent. Like we're not gonna debate that, but there's certain areas in your personal life and your ability to connect and your how you build relationships and how you lead your life that need to be sewn up. You need to tighten this up, and once you tighten that up, then your talent will shine even more.
Absolutely.
And people will it will be like a compounding effect towards your success. And so it's like this, you know, there was a scripture, I think, that I do remember talking about um, your gifts will make room for you and usher you before the presence of the great. I remember that when I was younger. But you know, when you think about that, that means that sometimes you can actually get into positions. Your talent can put you in positions that your character can take you right out of.
Absolutely.
And that's the crazy part about it. It's like, man, like how do you keep both of those things in check? And that's what you do. So what are some things that you do to you know, for your clients to kind of help them to balance that, you know, their talent versus the leadership principles that they need to establish?
Well, one of the things is getting clients, you know, the clients I work with, to really get down to what their core values are.
Okay.
Because when you have really strong core values, then those are the things that you can always go back and hold them accountable to. But if you don't have no core values, you just kind of fly by night, and who can really say anything to you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can say, you know, hey, you should act right. You should be respected. But that's not one of their core values. How can I hold them accountable to it? And so part of that is getting clients to identify what is of importance to you truly, not what other people say is important, but what do you truly value? And do you value it to the point that someone can pull your card on it? You see, that's the other thing, where you got people that get in these positions and they have no people around them that hold them accountable.
No checks and balances.
Yeah, no checks and balances. So people, you know, are enamored with the gift and they ignore the problems. And I don't want to say because either it's financially, you know, connected somehow, where it's like, no, those people need people accountable. I have to, even in the position I'm in, I got to have people that I'm accountable to that can say, hey man, nah. And they don't care about how, you know, whatever celebrity or whatever popular, they don't care nothing about that. They care about me and want to see me really win. So if they see me out of line, and I have to be humble enough to say, yeah, you're right.
Man, I have people like that in my life. I have coaches, mentors, friends that hold me accountable. And that is such a blessing, man. It's such, I think it's something that you can take for granted because, you know, when you build relationships with a lot of people, sometimes the relationships that you have are really deep and sometimes you can take them for granted. But if you didn't have those relationships, it's like, man, what happens when nobody's saying anything? Then you by yourself and you're really just agreeing with yourself and everything. It's almost narcissistic because, you know, every decision, every thought is your own thought. So you don't get an outside perspective, and you can destroy yourself by that. People need other people to grow. People need other people to advance. People need other people to say, yo, that stinks. That's, you know, the way how you treated old boy was ridiculous. You need to go change it, change something. And so that process though is painful sometimes. I talk to just, you know, clients, and I've had issues with friends or close, you know, people that I'm close with, and it's painful. It's an emotional process where you go through pain, and because we want to avoid that pain, a lot of us won't mature and grow in that area of saying, yo, that's my fault. That's my bad. Or I could have done this better. Or even if it wasn't necessarily your fault, it's like, well, these are some areas that I can still improve in. And that's that next level. That's why when I talk about I work with high performing professionals of color, you have to get on that playing field where it's not about right or wrong all the time. Sometimes it's just about like, what could I have done better? Because that's my own standard, and I have to keep on getting better. I can't stay where I'm at and that be okay for me, you know?
One thing my pastor told me one time, and it stuck with me, and it's one of those things I kind of stuck in my my development tool belt, as I would say.
Okay.
He said, "Would you rather be right or righteous?"
Mm.
And it just blew me away. It was like, wow. And so my approach to people were, I can be right in the situation, but would I rather them walk away feeling like, man, he dealt with me righteously,
Okay.
just trying to be right. You see what I mean? And so whether it's business or personal, again, but that's a core value. That's why I was saying getting back to those core values with people, because some people just, their intent is not to be a particular way or be a trip. They just don't know. They just don't have a frame of reference. And so, which is why I feel it's so important with some of my clients to get back to that. We can always, again, talk about the talent and the gifts and all that, but everybody talks about the talent and the gift and the wow factor of people, but not get down to, okay, I want you to have longevity in this. I want beyond your gift and talent, how will people walk away from you feeling like they got something deeper than your talent? And it comes down to who you are as a person, so getting those core values established and understood and setting your lifestyle in such a way where it's consistent with that core value. And you're not going to really have to say too much of anything, because just by default, when you have that solid, it's going to be reflected in your talent and how you talk to people. People are going to be able to absorb and feel that. People call it energy. Yeah, I know this person's energy. Their energy is something about that person. We've all been around people like, man, it's something about, whether it's good or bad, something about them that just either dope or like, and they didn't have to say a word. Their presence. And I think when people walk from a certain place of value, it just exudes from them. It just comes out of them before they even speak.
And it's not even conscious. They're not even conscious of it most of the time. It becomes so much a part of who you are. That's why I talk about habits, the importance of building habits, because when it becomes habitual, you don't have to think about it. It's just who you are now. Now you just go out and connect with people automatically. It's just not, you're not even trying anymore. It's like how I don't know if you watch, well, I know you watch basketball. You have to, because you're at the games at the Portland, do it. But have you ever watched some of these really talented basketball players when they get in the zone? It's almost like they're moving with such ease, and then they get interviewed and they ask them the questions like, hey, when you did this and that, and they're like, what do you mean? Right? You're like, oh, you mean when I don't know, I just kind of and I went to the cup, and scored. It's almost like they're not thinking, they're just reacting. Because it's so much a part of who they are.
And they practice that. You notice, you use the basketball analogy, usually what happens on the court is a reflection of what you do off the court. So the same thing with life. I mean, a lot of times we compare that with children and say, what's your home training? So when they go out in public, they're, a lot of times we're hoping they're a reflection of the home training that they got. And usually if they haven't gotten any home training, it's a reflection on how they're acting out, out in public. Same thing with us as adults. If we don't practice the things that we want the results from, then when we get out and pressures in life or in business come, guess what? We're going to do what we know.
Right.
That's good or bad. We're going to do what we know. So some of those habits you talked about is, okay, what are you filling yourself up with? Because whatever you fill yourself up with is what's going to come out, personally or business-wise. So if you fill yourself with angered information, when you go out in the public, it's going to be angered. Anger is going to be distributed. You develop in behind closed doors, and you work on who you are, work on patience, work on relationships behind the scenes, guess what? The results of that is 9 times out of 10 is going to be reflected in how you handle yourself out in the public.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, and I can say particularly for, if I just look at myself, before I was in the place that I was in, I just didn't know. So I only did what I knew. I only responded with how I knew to respond, but not because there was an intentional search for knowledge or search for people I can be around to absorb their knowledge and information or see how they handle things. When I was younger, I was on the, around street gangs. So because I was around them, I absorbed their language, I absorbed the posture. So when life circumstance came, I responded based on what I knew. I didn't have an adult saying, no, guy, this is how you're supposed to handle. This is how men handle things.
Well, let's talk about this, because everybody knows DJ now. Let's go back to what you were just talking about right there. Growing up, I mean, what was life like for you growing up? What's the evolution of DJ? Because we already know you're polished now, but how did you grow up, and how did that affect you?
Oh well, I've had quite the unique experience as relates to my life. The stuff that I've gone through getting to where I am now is probably, I often say it was made for TV. It's made for movies. Growing up typically, like a lot of young African-American men, not having a father around. I grew up single mom situation. My mom, when I was younger, was really heavy into church and things like that. But I had bad experiences in the church. So I didn't have any siblings. I was the only child for a while. And so, my mom was really kind of strict in terms of,
Let you do nothing.
Yeah, not let me do nothing. So by the time I did get out, I'm going to find who I can hang around, and around the age of 10, I can remember is when I started really being intrigued by the whole gang life in LA, and seeing, how that operated. It was the camaraderie. It was like, man, the brotherhood and oh, I got your back type thing. And I, being the only child who I had no big brothers or anybody that to protect me. I didn't have family around. It was just me and my mom, really. None of my relatives were in Los Angeles. They're all back east. So it was like I was fending for myself. So I gravitated to those friends, even though I never got jumped in or anything like that, but all my friends were gang members. So I was affiliated just because of the neighborhood I was in. And so I adapted some of that posture. My mom was so consumed with, her life and dealing with her, whatever issues she was dealing with, that she never really paid a whole lot of attention to what I was doing, because I brought good grades home. I knew I got to bring good grades home. Better not have a teacher call home and say nothing, because my mom was one of those. She'll come up to the school with the belt, in front of you. You care about embarrassing you. So I knew what to bring back home. But when I left out the door, I was in the streets. So, surviving, gang stuff in LA. I was fortunate enough around the age of close to 15, where I had a pastor kind of take me on his wings and kind of help guide me off, out of that situation, got me into sports, kind of opened some doors for me.
What did you play? What was basketball? Was it football?
Basketball, and I ran track.
Okay.
Basketball, ran track. I actually was a swimmer as well. So I won swimming titles in Los Angeles. And I actually started training for the '84 Olympics when I was younger. So I was,
So you were cold at swimming then?
Yeah, well, it was for the Olympics. It was for track. So I was 800 and 1500 meter runner.
Oh, okay.
So, I was training there, and he got me in the summers. I would work at the NBA Summer Pro League. It's actually where I first met Jerome Kersey, Terry Porter, all those guys, MJ, Magic Johnson. I met them when I was 16, 17, working in the NBA Pro League. And so did that, was training. Unfortunately, skipping forward, how I got to Portland is that the same church I was in came up to compete in the Cascade Runoffs, which was an annual running event in Oregon.
Okay.
In Los Angeles, I was competing in the long distance running, the 5, 10Ks and stuff like that. And our church had an athletic department.
Okay.
So all the kids in the church, adults, we all trained. So
that's rare, right? I mean, that's not normal, right? I don't know too many churches that have an athletic program. I know we used to have midnight basketball every now and then, but there was no athletic program.
We had a training team that had, we had a few, selected few of us that was actually training for the Olympics. That's when the Olympics was coming to Los Angeles. And so that we was killing people down in LA, so we heard about the Cascade Runoffs in Oregon. So he's like, okay, let's go up there and run in that tournament. But we had no facility up here. So we got some property in Sandy, Oregon, and pitched some tents out there and said, we're going to train for this situation and then head back down to LA. So at the time, you think Sandy, Oregon. So think of Sandy, Oregon, and you have...
There's no black people in Sandy, Oregon.
No black people. So imagine all these black people descending on Sandy, Oregon. They pitching these tents on this farm, or this land, rather. And imagine what the neighbors were thinking.
Oh, yeah. Racist.
We're talking about like maybe 50 to 100 adults, and not including the kids. So we're running up and down these highways in Sandy, Oregon. The news media comes out. So no problem, because we were used to being on TV in Los Angeles anyway, because and so, but they came, did a story. Hey, what are you guys doing here? We're training for the Cascade Runoffs. We're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, 6 o'clock news comes on, and they splice the screen and say, hey, this group of people here to train for whatever. And then they splashed it with this lady who was a PR for this cult group, the Rajneesh.
Oh.
They were saying similar thing. Next thing you know, all hell broke loose. Now we were thrown in the national media spotlight as the new cult of Oregon, and everything fell out. Long story short, man, there ended up being a death. It's a longer story. You got to get the book, The Man Behind the Music. But it was on national TV, Oprah, Time Magazine. One of the kids ended up dying, and so that heightened the whole thing. And then so people were indicted. My mom spent 13 years in prison. I ended up being homeless. I ended up being homeless in Oregon, and this was around 88, 89. I was homeless.
Was this after your track? Did the track dreams, did they just dissipate?
Huh?
Did the track dreams just dissipate overnight, or how did that?
So what happened is, well, if I go back a little bit, with the '84 Olympics, right before the trials, I ended up having a major hernia operation. And so that took me out of being able to compete at that time. But then right after that, I was working in the NBA Pro-Am, still training after I, got better. But that's when we were doing all these events and ended up being in Oregon, and then all this stuff broke out. So everything shut down. Like everything I was doing shut down. And so I ended up being stuck here in Oregon because my mom was in Oregon. She ended up getting put in prison. All the kids that were part of the whole church thing, they all end up getting put in foster care. I had 3 kids at the time. They took all my kids, put them in foster care. So I spent the late part of the 80s and early part of the 90s trying to, one, not be homeless, and get myself back on my feet so I can get my kids. So I ended up getting my kids back. I had to take my brother. By that time, I had a little brother. Had to get him out of foster care, send him off, get him through high school, send him off to college, U.of.O.
How old were you then? How old were you when this was happening?
Probably 22, 23.
So you were handling. I mean, you were working and doing all these different things with foster care and.
Yeah, I was working 3 jobs. You know, at a time, 2-3 hours of sleep. You know, sleeping in a car. You know, sleeping in a car with my current wife now. You know, just trying to grind. Didn't have nobody. Couldn't even get a job at one point because once the story hit Oprah and Time magazine, anybody that, you know, said they was associated with that situation, it was like, nah, you're part of that cult thing, you know. And so I had to get myself established. I had to get myself on my feet. And in '92, I started a gang prevention program in Portland. And that was the thing that allowed me to get engaged with the Portland community and kind of establish who I was as a person separate from that whole church situation, and kind of built who I am today from that. You know, establishing relationships in the community, people getting to know who I was as opposed to what was the media had portrayed as this umbrella situation for the group. And from there, man, you know, got into the music scene in Portland.
Well, okay, so tell me that, because that's really important. Like how does DJ O.G.ONE emerge at this point? Because okay, you're going through ridiculous struggles. I mean, you're not even really painting a detailed picture.
I'm giving you.
I mean, you're glancing over the fact that you were homeless. You're glancing over the fact that you there was a cult investigation that surrounded, you know, folks that were associated with the church, and it kind of stained your reputation. All these different things happen, and you know your mom is in jail at this point. You don't have nobody. Like the emotions that you had to been going through.
Oh man, it was crazy, man. I was in a sense, I was mad at the world. I was mad at the world because I was like, you know, I spent my life, you know, coming off the streets, you know, and at the time, you know, they're calling the person that's basically saved my life, they call him a cult leader. You know, he ended up dying. They ended up finding him dead. So that was a whole nother level. So I was forced to make a choice. I had to make a very conscious choice because I knew I'm homeless, and I knew coming from Los Angeles, I know how to make money. I knew how to make money. And in Portland, at that, it was like, man, this is a playground for the background that I know.
Okay.
I can make money in real quick, but I had to make a conscious decision. It was like, okay, do I throw everything that I do know away to take the easy route out? It was like, nah, who do I want to be remembered as? And I knew not only that, then there was accountability. I had a woman who was following me. You know, anything I did was going to affect her life. I had my kids. It was like, anything I do is going to affect their lives now. And so I chose not to dig in, and that's where I got involved in the community, man. And although I was doing athletics, I was always musically inclined because my father was a musician, so loved music. And I'd already started doing some DJing in LA, just within our church stuff that we would go out and do, skating parties, different stuff like that. So
this was back in high school when you were just kind of starting it, like with the church. Okay.
and so one of the things I used when I had my gang prevention program called Gang Peace was I would throw monthly parties at Whitaker Middle School. I throw monthly parties and say, whoever got good grades and got good reports from a teacher, you get invited to this party. And I bring all kinds of candy, cookies, all that stuff to the party. And I'm playing cuts. So that was the only way you can get into these parties. So I had kids from all over that didn't go to Whitaker, would be coming, bringing, notes from their teachers and stuff to get into these after school parties. And the word just kind of passed around like, oh man, this dude, is throwing these parties and blah, blah, blah. And then I end up getting invited. I think one of the kids was related to one of the local promoters. And they got in contact with me and asked me, would I be interested in opening up a concert at the Rosen Theater. And I was like, yeah, I'd never done a concert. I just done, house parties or put mixtapes together up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And my first concert was opening up for Run DMC and Naughty by Nature at the Rosen Theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And this was in when? When was this?
This had to be about 94, 95.
Okay.
Around in there.
Were you DJ O.G at that point? O.G yet? Or were you just filling it out? Okay.
I didn't. So it was right around the same time actually that I had ended up getting my name, because my name is David Jackson. So most people just call me DJ anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I used to take kids down to OSP, kind of like a Scared Straight thing, where some of the inmates would talk to the kids about staying out of gangs and stuff like that. And there was a group of young men, former gang members that were in the penitentiary, that formed this group called Original Gangway. And the whole focus was ex-gang members, kind of educating kids and telling them to stay away from the gangs. But each member in the group, they would get assigned a number. So they was like OG1, OG2, OG3. So I was the only one they wanted me to be a part that wasn't locked up. So they asked me, would I be OG1 and just kind of be their liaison between outside and in? And I was like, sure. So I adapted the OG1 name from there. So long story short, some things happened within them internally where they broke up basically and didn't continue. And so I had the name, I'm stuck with the name. So I just changed the name from Original Gangway to One God.
Mm-hmm.
The OG standing for One God, because I didn't want anything associated that can be considered gang related. So I just was like, no, let me change it to One God. So when somebody says that name, it's a constantly built-in reminder to me of where I've come from and who got me through everything that I went through. People say OG is just to remind me I got to always remember God and remember that, everything that I achieve is because of him and because of what he's brought me through.
Yeah. So that faith in God has been that crux, that not crux, but it's been that power source for you to be able to get through these tough times.
Yeah. And it was hard, man, because me and God went some rounds. Me and God went rounds, man, because with all the stuff that I was going through and stuff that was attached to churches and things like that, man, it was like, why would God, send me through all this stuff? Why? But then you get to the point where if you read the Bible enough, you'll see. You'll see. People went through stuff, and it was all in preparation for something bigger than what they could realize. And that's how I see my life, man, whether it's through music, business, or whatever, community. I feel everything that I've gone through, he's prepared me for to do his work.
Let me ask you this: was the Roseland Theater, when you first felt like, okay, this is my first level of success. You know, this is something that I can put my whole energy into, because I know you were doing work with gangs and whatnot, but were you able to transition to DJing full time? Was the Roseland like the start to everything, or tell me about that?
The Roseland definitely was a start, but even at that time, I didn't see it as, oh, okay, now I'm here, I'm DJing for, I'm opening the show for Run DMC and Naughty by Nature. People,
Okay.
I still looked at it always as, oh, this is going to give me some leverage. Now I can go back to these kids. It was always, I can go back to these kids and leverage that and say, see, you get these opportunities like this when you live this way. So when I tell you to step away from gangs, I can say, this gave me, by me living the way that I'm living, it put me in a position to have access to this. And that had been my focus the whole time. Even after that, after that show, pretty much every major hip hop show, R&B concert, whatever that was coming through Portland, I was on the bill. So much that I had at the time it was 95.5 that it came on the scene. That part after that, and I wasn't on the radio. I wasn't on the radio or anything. People was wondering, why you not on the radio? Your name is in all the commercials on their station, but you're not on the radio. And I'm like, I don't know. You got to ask them, I don't really care, because my name was big already. By that time, I've done so many stuff. I'm DJing, Jay-Z, after parties, everybody that was anybody that was coming through Portland, my name was on the bill for either concert or after party.
And that was because you had taken that concept from making the party concept from originally from the kids, from working with the kids, and just like amplified it on a bigger level.
All word of mouth. I have never had to market myself. To this day, I've never had to market myself. When social media came, it created a platform for me to kind of expose my brand. But in terms of my reputation and opportunities, it all came from word of mouth. Someone told someone that was either in a corporate position, community position, television network, radio position, have all come and said, hey, we need you to come rock with us. We need you to come do this. My sponsorships came from, whether it's from Toyota to Nike to Adidas, whatever, all those things came from people going and saying, this guy you need to be messing with.